Colleagues, thank you for your tolerance, and then this wouldn't work either. So there's clearly a USB problem. Maybe I'd like to think it's the impact of my magnetic and electric personality on the technology, but we know it's not that. So again, colleagues, thank you for your tolerance. Alan Parkinson, I'm at the UCL School of Management. We're actually based not in Bloomsbury, where the traditional UCL is, but we moved some time ago to Canary Wharf in the big tower building. That's the view from level 38, but we've also acquired level 50, which is just as well, because we used to run a number of sessions, bringing people in, and we'd say view from the 38th, and then we discovered that that's the line, the dividing line between South Korea and North Korea. So we can now call it view from the 50th, which is better. So as the clicker won't work, let me come to and from here. It does what it says on the label, doesn't it? Or does it? The evolution of accountancy towards a new definition. So one of the things that we might like to think about is, that traditional stereotypical description of an accountant. You'll see that I've picked a male there, even though I think in the UK now over 40% of professionally qualified accountants and finance professionals are not male, and that's the only one I could find there. And then, are we moving towards being superheroes? Well, of course we're not, but maybe we're moving in that direction, which can help in terms of the restructuring of the global economy. So the focus of what I want to go through today is this impact of the changing world, the new job roles, which there are for finance professionals within the accountancy profession, and then moving towards a new definition. And there's been a move going on for quite a while now, but in the past 10 years or so, just moving away from this very technical definition, and then how accountants may or may not be able to help with and collaborate with other colleagues as we're in this brave new world of seeking to restructure the global economy. And of course, restructuring global economies means that we also have to restructure national economies and the interrelationships between those economies. So I just thought I've got this a book I read many years ago, but I thought this might be appropriate. You can't stop the future. You can't rewind the past. The only way to learn the secret is to press play. But of course, we don't want to set play. I think we have to put a context on that, because we have to have learned the lessons of the past, but put those in the context of being prepared to understand that there are risks, which mean that we can't actually be prepared for everything. But nonetheless, we will press play. The changing world. We have the world. Dr. Datto this morning mentioned about VUCA world, and we have the VUCA world there. We could argue the world's on fire. Some of the other things we've heard about today, we've heard about the conflict in Ukraine. We just a few moments ago heard about edgicide, a new word for me, or maybe I do that in my lectures with my students anyway, I don't know. And all this, if you think about the supply chain problems that are going on in the world, there are conflicts elsewhere all around the world. We have outsourcing, offshoring. There's all sorts of stuff that's going on. So we're in this world which perhaps literally is on fire. Changing world again. You look at go back X number of years. I don't know how long ago that was. 1950s, 1960s, maybe. The calm sea that sailing ship organizations representing sailing ships were on, where things were quite rational. Our planning could be quite rational. There weren't that many changes that were going on. Then, of course, we got technological changes. In the 70s, we had the first oil crisis. We then moved into the 80s, and we had all sorts of challenges arising from globalization and more technological advances. And what we saw, of course, was that the world was becoming much more complex. And of course, we get to, I showed you the flames on the world. Are we actually now in a chaos situation? Some of you will be familiar with chaos theory. I've taken that there from Ralph Stacey, who I had the pleasure of working with a number of years ago, and that now seems to potentially be back on the agenda. So again, we just stop and say, hang on, but what's that got to do with accountants, Alan? Well, let's see if we can fit the accountants in, not just because we need to fit them on, because perhaps they actually do have a contribution to be making. Here's something from, I think it was 2015, 2016, an ACCA, one of the professional accountancy bodies, and we see here a number of impacts of changes that there will be upon accountancy work. So development of international intelligent automated systems, you know, the robots are coming, we hear that. The rate of change in economic volatility. Well, certainly, I think if we look at that now, these days, you know, when you've got COVID, which happened, you've got the Ukraine conflict, which happened, you've got semiconductor chip shortages, there's all sorts of stuff which is happening really quickly. Whoops, camera over. Harmonisation of accounting standards. Don't want to be too boring with you there, but it is part of what goes on in the world of accountancy. Around the world, international financial reporting standards. Are we going for harmonisation? Are we going for standardisation? Are we going for convergence? That's always a good question to give to students. You know, distinguish between those three, discuss in 5,000 words, and it's interesting the answers you actually get. What do we do in a multinational world, and particularly if you're a multinational organisation, when you've got some parts of the world who say, oh, these international accounting standards, haven't they got, in quotes, an Anglo-Saxon origin? And didn't we try and conquer the world once? And now you're trying to impose things on us again. And so they're moving back from it as well. And there you are as a multinational corporation trying to make sense of how do we do the financial reporting. We have, what have we got here? Cloud computing. Some of us will be familiar with that as well. And then we heard about, who is it I mentioned? Gen Z, I think it was our colleague. Yeah, Gen Z, different expectations. And also, not even just Gen Z, we have our own differing expectations. They change as we mature, as you mature, because I don't think I've ever matured unless it's like a cheese, I don't know. And there's even more, I mentioned about the harmonisation of standards that we have there. Increasing female participation in the workforce around the world, we see that's beginning to happen. Data mining. What university doesn't have some program or module on data mining and data analytics? And everybody has it. I mean, both of you do it, or one of you did it. Yeah, I mean, it's there, it's happening. And was it Warren Buffett who said that data is the new economic moat? He said that a while ago. And so if we can harness the data and synthesize it and analyze it, that can give us competitive advantage. So I won't go through every single one of those, but there's a lot going on in the world of accountancy. Back in 2015, this came out. It's been accelerated now. There was the Oxford Martin report back in 2013, I think it was, here in Oxford. Frey and Osborne, who looked at what might be the impact of computerization on jobs. And they ranked jobs from 0 up to 1. And the closer you are to 1, problems. The closer you are to 0, we're okay. So I think one of the ones that I remember was, if you're a substance abuse social worker, it was 0.0013, so very close to 0. If you're a credit analyst or a bookkeeper or an audit clerk, 0.98. So that doesn't bode well for some people in the world of accountancy, but other opportunities arise. This was a paper that was research that was done by Ernst & Young in Singapore, looking at data analytics on financial services. Managing data, we need to get better at that. The in-depth analysis, now some of that of course can be done through better use of technology, but collaboration. The accountants aren't just in a silo, the rest of us in our own areas are not just in a silo. You know, we need to be working together. And if it's a global restructuring, where do we get that international collaboration as well? Transformation. We know that transformation is necessary. I wonder, do the accountants, the reports seem to say it, do the accountants have a role in driving that transformation forward? Risk, I showed you the chaos slide. We know risk is there. We can't eliminate risk. We can mitigate risk. So what's the data that we need to help us to be able to mitigate risk so we can make that balanced judgment? We might get it wrong, but often we might get it right as well. and more regulatory standards that are coming out. And then you get conflicts, as I said earlier, around the world with local cultures, national cultures, and so on. Audit. Anybody had the pleasure of the auditors visiting them? You are auditors.
I used to work as auditor.
Yes, but then you saw the light and I'm joking. As an accountant, I could never say that.
He's auditor and I've always been audited.
And of course, there is the old one, isn't there? That and I'm only joking when I say this. There are the auditors in the room or listening. What's the definition of an extrovert auditor? Somebody who looks at your shoes when they talk to you. But we have this image of audit, you know, we talk about auditors, it's necessary, isn't it? And I called it a changing image. That should make us worry. No, I'm not saying they all go behind bars. There have been auditors who've gone into prison. Now here's just a selection. You have a look at these. The Securities and Exchange Commission back last year, July, fined EY for misconduct and lack of independence. And they actually said an existing or potential investor would not rely on the impartiality based upon the conduct of the auditors. Now that is a damning indictment, even if there are no other issues. Kpmg, let's look at the one, UK firms in 2021 fined 46.5 million, and Kpmg had half of those. There are other fines around the world as well. This is really interesting. Have a look at the one at the top there. Kpmg Financial Review in Australia portioned over systematic exam cheating between 2016 and 2020. 1,100 instances of cheating in exams where they were supposed to be keeping up to date with standards and codes of conduct and then cheating. Right?
It's supposed to be one in Big Four, yeah?
Sorry?
There's supposed to be one in Big Four.
Yes. And then again, in the US, not just Australia, $100 million fine after auditors cheated on ethics exams. I mean, there's just something there. Now, of course, that doesn't mean to say that every auditor, and I stress this, is like that. But that's the image that gets out there into the public arena. We had enough problems back in the 2007-2008 crash when the credit agencies gave Lehman's and everybody else AAA ratings. What was it? 6 months before the crash. Oh, it's fine. Nothing to worry about at all. Now, don't want to get political. I will put it out there that Prem Seeker, has anybody come across Prem Seeker in the world of accountancy? He's now in the House of Lords in London. He's a Labour Lord, been nominated. And he has a particular view, so I'll put that there. I won't say whether I agree with it or not, but quite interesting. Have a look at that one at the bottom-hand side on the left-hand side as you look at it. They still can't deliver robust and honest audits. They're at the heart of corruption in the UK. Now, you know, that again, you could give that to students. Go away and research that and discuss that. Is it actually true? It was just under 21%. The Financial Reporting Council said in that year that these 7 firms that you can see there, who are all well-known firms in the world of accountancy, they've been taken to task and they've been fined. So again, that's a challenge for accountancy as well, and that will also feed into this new definition as well. I've just got the 5-minute sign. I'm looking at colleagues. They're hoping it's only 1 minute. I can tell. But,
we'll have to do some creative accounting.
Indeed. Yes. Oh, right. And you know the one about the job, don't you? The job interview. Job interview for an accountant. Goes in. The boss says, "What's 2 + 2? 4. Get out." Next one. What's 2 + 2? 4. Get out. Next one. What's 2 + 2? Whatever you want, boss. Gets the job. We often get that in student exams, don't we? When the sheet doesn't quite work out, but it's not just being creative.
Alan, that's true of computer scientists too.
Yeah, I think it's true of all of us. All of us, yeah.
It's not just some of lawyers.
That's what I was going now. Professions. Right, so just very quickly then, as I'm now down to 4 minutes, changing. Sorry, I think I moved on too quickly. Press the button. Let me just show you how it's changing. Yeah, I've just taken two definitions from the past. Don't read them. It's just about technical stuff. The first one, way back in '53, which came out in 1941, you'll notice that it talks about money transactions. Because we do financial breakdown, tell us how the organisation is done. By '66, it had moved on. It had changed monetary to economic. And it had mentioned users of information, but it didn't really become very specific about that. This is really interesting. If you get a chance, it's a very accessible paper. It really is. You don't have to be an accounting or finance expert to read it. By Parker, I can never say it, Tasharidou, and Carnegie. And Gary Carnegie has done a lot of work in this area. It's technical, yeah, it's that first word. But social and moral. What's becoming of the world of accountancy? Social and moral? What on earth is going on here? Another key word, stakeholders.
Stakeholder.
Yeah, the technical stuff is there. How do we do accounting? Of course, there's going to be the technical stuff. But the social practice, we're all now talking about corporate governance, we're talking about ESG, we talk about our wider range of stakeholders. So should accounting be accounting for that? And if so, how so? And that certainly is one of the big moves at the moment. But then there's the moral practice. What should accounting do? What should it not do? Linked to this social dimension. What do we do as accountants when we see an annual report being prepared, which has greenwashing, where the report is being done, oh, we're really environmentally sound, we do all the right things. We do all the right things. And we know that actually the organization is just paying lip service to it. What should we do about things that we know are wrong? You know, so you get into that area of morality as well. And again, if you get the opportunity, very accessible paper, so you don't have to be an expert. 2 final slides. Some contributions post-COVID. Just have a look at that date at the bottom, March 2021. So I thought this was quite interesting from the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. Post-COVID, the accountancy profession should be helping businesses survive and prosper, drive growth in economy. That's very laudable. But look at this, this was 2021. The explosion of government debt and money printing will one day lead to levels of inflation not seen for 20 years. That was March last year. Where are we now? Not just in the UK, you look around the EU, you look in the US, you look elsewhere. What's happening to inflation? Interesting question for those who have got some connection with accounting. The Sandilands report back in the 1970s. I only know that because my great-great-grandfather told me about it, you understand. He told about the Beatles as well. Where they said, is the time right for inflation accounting? So just some other stuff that's going on there. And then one of the other things that we know is that public sector around the world will have a role to play. So here's another one from the International Federation of Accountants. The value of global public assets is 2 times the value of global domestic product. Better accounting. There are very many governments and nations around the world who still use cash. New Zealand, way back in the 80s, revolutionized things by adopting what's in commercial organizations accrual accounting. And they've had COVID challenges, we understand that, but prior to COVID, some huge successes there. Could generate much more revenue than you get in corporate tax contributions. And of course, if we look what's happening in the wider, go back to the COP meeting that was back in Glasgow, was it October, November last year? Infrastructure investments for all our sustainable development goals. So a lot going on. What are the next steps? What directions do we go in? What are the questions we need to find to answer? I mean, who is it? Which American politician was it? The unknown unknowns. some time ago. Yeah, the unknown unknowns. How do we, and when I say we, I don't mean accountants, but how do we become the superheroes? Because the world is, some would argue, I give no views, some would argue, the world's in a mess. How do we become the superheroes collaborating with others to try and make it at least less of a mess? Thank you for your tolerance right at the start and your patience. And I did overrule a lot of people.